What's up guys, welcome to Talking Poodoo, a Star Wars show where today I'm reviewing Dooku, Lost Jedi by Cavan Scott, which is all about Count Dooku's, well, the eventual Count Dooku's life as a Jedi and how he transitioned from being a Jedi to being a politician to then fall into the dark side. So, what did I think of it overall? Well, firstly, this is the audio production version of this, not the new script-based version that they've just released as a book. So the audio production version came out earlier this year, but I held off getting it because it was ridiculously priced. So now it's out at a much more accessible price, and they've got the actual script alongside it. So first thing, I thought it was just okay. I do have to question why it was made as an audio production and not as a novel or a comic book or something like that. I think the actual audio production side of it is a little unnecessary, and I think it would have been a bit better had it been a novel or a comic book. That way you could flesh out some of the other characters and the whole worlds and environments that they're in as well. Because as it is just basically character says one thing, another character says another. There are some sound effects here and there, but you don't really get a good sense of what's actually going on or what things look like and so on. But it is okay. Like the Star Wars audiobooks that you usually get, there are the soundtracks, they have got the music, they've got the sound effects, they've got the actors doing voiceover impressions and so on. This time though, it's a full voice cast rather than just one person reading it out. And that's kind of the big selling point of this. What I liked about the story in this is that it is interesting. It does delve into a character I really like. He's one of my favourite Star Wars characters, Count Dooku, and it explores his background. It shows you him as a child, then as he's growing up, then as he becomes the Christopher Lee, Corey Burton Count Dooku that we know from the Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and the Clone Wars. But I wouldn't say it's revolutionary. There's a lot of stuff in here which is kind of like, yeah, I kind of put that together myself, I kind of figured that out. It's not really shown, there's nothing really surprising about it. And that's a little on the disappointing side. But what I really liked about it is the actual gradual fall from grace, where he goes from being a Jedi to a politician to the dark side. I think that was done really well paced out. It shows you that the Republic and the Jedi Order have some issues in terms of what they're doing, what they're capable of doing, how right and wrong's getting in the way of things, how law and order's getting in the way of things, and the Jedi, while they are meant to be the protectors of peace in the galaxy, they're not actually able to do a lot of that because of politics and a bunch of other stuff going on. And that's one of the many things that really knocks Dooku and he really wants to fix. So I like how it delves into that stuff. I like how it explores some of the problems with the Republic and the Jedi, and it really almost justifies Dooku's leaving of the Jedi Order. I thought that was really quite good. Two things I want to talk about here in terms of the story, getting into slight specifics, but not spoilers. I'm not going to spoil anything here. Asajj Ventress is kind of our introduction into this story. It's basically, this story is presented prior to the events of Attack of the Clones, I believe, where Count Dooku has gave her a task of finding someone that he knows. Not going to say who it is, not going to delve into anything more beyond that. So she's our introduction, but what that means is we get Asajj Ventress's origin stories, and what's really interesting is that they've now returned to the original Clone Wars animated show. They've basically made her origin story from that canon, which is great because her origin story in that is pretty good. It's really interesting how she was fighting in a gladiatorial arena. Dooku then showed up wanting to hire the best to be an assassin for him. So all of that is now canon again. It's just presented in a different way. So I thought that was really cool and interesting. And then the story does, I think, build up pretty well towards the end. There is a lot of momentum, a lot of adrenaline heading into the end, although I thought the end was a bit on the cheesy side. There were some things where I was like, this is delving into Star Wars territory, which I'm not a big fan of, and I'm not going to delve into that too much. But the problem is, between the beginning and the end, the actual main thrust of the narrative feels very episodic, because it is basically Asajj like picking up a diary entry and saying, right, this is what happened here, let's see what that was. There's another diary entry, let's see what happened. It feels very like episodic, very put together with a loose narrative, combining them all there. And that was a little disappointing how there isn't really a strong narrative from beginning to end. It is very much just, he has Asajj, He has Dooku, he has Asajj, he has Dooku, he has Asajj, he has Dooku, and it's all loosely connected basically. And because there are time jumps as well, particularly in the Dooku side of things, where it is going from him as a child to eventually being an old man, it can be a little tricky to figure out where exactly this is in the timeline. But of course, this is now canonical, so how does it link into other things like Episode 1, The Phantom Menace? I think it does a pretty good job. There is a book that came out this year called Master and Apprentice, which dives into Dooku's past a little bit as well, with Qui-Gon, and a new character introduced called Rael Averross. The way in which it links into that is quite good too. So I think it's actually well thought out, and they've clearly put a lot of attention to detail to make sure that it fits into the canon that they've got now, and that was good. But just to get a little bit more on the audio production side of things, maybe this is because I'm listening on my Apple iBooks app. I don't know if it's going to be different on different services, but the way that the tracks were positioned was really odd, I thought. The fact that what it says is like a chapter or a track, but then end like midway through a sentence. It was really bizarre. Why would you end it there? Especially when in 10 seconds time there's a perfect place you can stop. It felt like everything was just misplaced, and I'm not really going to put this against the production or the book or whatever. It's more about the presentation of it. It's not really the fault of who people making it, I don't think. I could be wrong though, but it's just something that's really frustrated me and annoyed me a bit, because I'd end up having to end the chapter halfway through, it seemed, because they were all really weirdly placed. But let's get into the characters a bit more, and this is a audio production, like I've said quite a few times, so you've got to talk about the voice acting. The voice acting is pretty good for the most part. They've clearly put in the emotion and the effort into the characters that they're playing. They're clearly playing it really well. The problem is that the characters that we know from the films and the TV shows and so on rarely actually sound like the characters they're meant to be. So this is all about Count Dooku. The main character is Count Dooku. Why doesn't he sound like Count Dooku? He sounds nothing like him whatsoever, and that's a huge problem, I think, an annoying one as well, because for me personally, like I said, he's one of my favourite Star Wars characters. So he doesn't sound anything like Christopher Lee or Corey Burton from the Clone Wars. So why is that? I don't know. It's fine when he's younger, when of course he wouldn't have the big, deep, iconic voice that they have. But for the most part here, it just seems like he's not even trying to sound like them, which is odd. Why would you cast this person? But again, the actual performance is fine. It's just, why would you cast this guy as this character? It doesn't make sense. Other characters though, like Yoda and Asajj Ventress, sound really quite good. But then there's also guys like Qui-Gon Jinn shows up as a young Padawan. He doesn't really do a good job. Again, the actual performance is fine, but when you realise that it's Qui-Gon Jinn, that's where it gets a bit iffy, because it does sound like he's doing a really bad impression. And it sounds like he's just putting on an Irish accent, basically, which is odd. Then, like I mentioned earlier, Master and Apprentice introduced a new character, Rael Averross. Really interesting character. I like that character a lot. I want to see more of that character. But here, first time presented in a voice role, the character is so cheesy. Why did they give him a deep, American accent like this? It just sounds so bizarre and out of place in the Star Wars galaxy and universe. So, yeah, I was disappointed with the representation of him. But one of the things I like, moving away from the actual audio production side of things and back to the story and the characters, is because this is all about Asajj Ventress finding out things about Dooku, looking into Dooku's past and discovering who he is, what he's done and so on. The way in which it delves into their relationship really adds something. I'm not going to look back on Star Wars The Clone Wars, the animated TV show and the movie, and see things from a different light, to see that their relationship actually has more depth and more elements to it than I initially thought. It's not a typical master-apprentice relationship. There's also the character of Cypher Dyas. You will have heard him from Attack of the Clones, also mentioned in a few episodes of the Clone Wars. The depiction of him I was a little iffy about, because it delves into, again, areas of Star Wars that I've never really been too comfortable with. And yeah, I thought the depiction of him was just a little on the disappointing side. It doesn't really touch upon the fact that he commissioned the clone army or anything like that. So even though time-wise he would have had to have literally done this towards the end of where this book ends. Not getting into spoilers, but yeah, it's weird how it didn't touch upon that, it didn't hint at that or anything. But also throughout this book, because Yoda was Count Dooku's master, because he was the main guy training Count Dooku when he was a Jedi, it's really fascinating to see Yoda in a much more hands-on master and apprentice situation, because from all the films and so on, Yoda is very much the wise guy who's kind of running the Jedi Order, at least in the prequels. We only ever see him being like a master, being hands-on fully in Empire Strikes Back. So it's good to see him in his youth, in his prime, training Dooku and showing us why he is the one of the best Jedi ever. I thought that was really interesting, and to see his dynamic with Dooku when Dooku was young was really interesting too. Again, this adds a new dynamic to the relationship in Attack of the Clones. We already knew that Yoda was Count Dooku's master, but now to see how that relationship started and where it ends up progressing to the events of Attack of the Clones when they do fight one another really adds a little element there. I'm not going to go into spoilers. There's not a lot to say about this. It is kind of predictable. It is basically showing you how Dooku went from a Jedi to a politician to the dark side. There's not a lot here that's surprising or like, wow, I didn't see that coming, or that's really interesting. The way in which it does do the gradual shift from good guy to dark side guy is interesting. It is well done, but it's something that we kind of already knew happened anyway. It doesn't really explore it in a unique or interesting way that way on. But it is okay. I do kind of recommend it. Maybe get the book version over this, I don't know. Whatever one you prefer, I suppose. But if you do get the audio production, just be aware that some of the voice acting it's good, it just doesn't sound like the characters from the films, which is a little annoying and distracting. But this has been Talking Poodoo. Thanks for watching now, and I'm Grant Burton. Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton if you're interested in following me. But most importantly, please subscribe, because that means a lot. The more subscribers I get, the more content I can make, and we all love that content. So that's it for this week. Thanks for watching.